Good afternoon, Evolution Business Development. I'm Isis Latham, your host, and it's my pleasure to be able to introduce you to somebody who's quite dear to me. You've heard me talk about this person, Liz Pipitone. You might have heard me mentioning that I'm going to be participating as a co-host in this really building your business and making it structured in such a way that you don't lose sight of something just because you didn't know about it. Well, we've got that coming up, but I'm not going to belabor that at the moment. And here's a funny little tidbit for you all. I know Liz so well and enjoy her company so much that I literally forgot to open up the information that I normally have in front of me when I'm going to introduce someone. So I've got it now. But isn't that really the treat in this, right, Liz? We met through your brother. Your brother introduced us and he said, "You're going to love my sister." And I met you and I went, "Oh, I do. I want to explore this and see how we can work together, how we can help each other." And things just started to fall into place. And she comes to the table with her business partner, Dave Pipitone, and together they started a pandemic business that is not just a pandemic business. It might have been the catalyst, but it's so much more. And a couple of things that you mentioned about yourself that were really important to you is that you help small businesses and faith-based organizations get their message out to more people online so they can multiply their reach and grow. Now, a lot of people say that they do this work, and we have a lot of assumptions about what that might look like, what it means. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, Liz, to explain that a little bit. Navigation does what?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the intro, Isis. Much appreciated. Absolutely. Navigation works to help businesses tell their story. That's really what it's all about, whether it's me telling my story with my business or helping the client. People buy from people. They want to know, what is the business that they're thinking about working with all about? Would we be a good fit? If you think about when you're purchasing something these days, one of the very first things you do is go online, look them up. What are the reviews? Do they have a presence? Are they active? If you're seeing company A that has, wonderful reviews and lots of testimonials and content where there are pictures of people who are using their product happily, that would most likely be the company that you're going to choose to purchase from versus a company that may have a outdated web page 10 years old and nothing else online. It's just the reality of 2024. And I have the privilege of helping businesses make themselves more visible these days and get their word out about what they do, so they're not stuck in the dark or behind the Amazon giant, and they can have a really good chance at getting in front of their ideal clients.
I think that is so important what you're saying, because it is 2024 now. And we had this stretch of period where people started doing things that were uncomfortable. They started building systems for marketing to reach people. What have you seen that's changed during that period? So maybe they started it. Are they being consistent? Are they changing again and reevaluating their processes and their systems?
Absolutely. So in the past 4 years or so that I've been in content marketing, which has been an extremely exciting roller coaster of a time in the content marketing world. If you think about, we went from pre-pandemic, when there were a lot of successes still with in-person business and storefronts, and then we went to the shutdown where everything moved online. We're doing e-commerce like crazy, purchasing from whether it's walmart.com versus going into the store, or whether we're purchasing from an online small business. We've gone from having successes with again, marketing in person, to now we need to be more present across more platforms than ever before. So that, and the term for that is omnipresence. So you need to have a presence over, if your ideal clients are hanging out on Facebook, we need to make a good presence over there. If your ideal clients tend to watch some YouTube videos, we need to start considering content there. We need to diversify how we get in front of people more than ever. A, for the reason that they are in many different places, and B, all of the algorithms, I'm sure you've heard in the news, sometimes there are certain platforms that will just close your account for no good reason, or perhaps there's the recent TikTok ban that perhaps it's going to be obsolete in America in a few months. If you've built your following only on one platform and all of a sudden that's pulled out from under you, you're left with starting from ground zero and building yourself up again. So it's it's more and more wise as the years go on to get on as many platforms as your audience is, hanging out, with good quality content where you're focused on helping them with your tips and your free advice you're giving out, or your videos to help them get to know you.
Okay. Well, I think that most people are in agreement that content is important. I think that if we look at our own behaviors and habits, we recognize this omnipresence is also critically important. So now we're at the point of, and I'll raise my own hand, we're over inundated with the number of platforms that we're going on to and how we need to show up consistently. This is where you come in, right? Where you and Dave are helping, and I think you even bring on some subs too. You're helping people to take the content that they're already using and making small shifts to go onto different platforms. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. It's this magical tool called content repurposing.
Uh-huh.
This is one of the first things I learned about when I was training to be a virtual assistant at the start of the pandemic. Not only did we learn how to make a blog and how to make a social post, we learned how to repurpose it.
Hmm.
So what that means is identifying which piece of content, which video or podcast or blog that you are writing, every week, every month, whatever your time period is, identifying that big piece of content called a pillar piece of content and figuring out ways that you can pull little bits of it out and sprinkle that great information that you've already created across all your platforms. So if you're pulling out, say, an introduction of your blog every week and you're putting it on a nice background and you're posting it on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, you haven't duplicated your effort. You haven't had to go and start with a blank page over on your creation tool.
Yeah.
You're working with what you already have. And some of the statistics that are out there about content repurposing are your big piece of content, your pillar, takes about 75 to 80% of your effort. And the remaining 20 to 25% is just sprinkling that content across your other platforms. So if you think about the time savings, it's very significant.
So you can essentially take any industry, help them to find the interesting pillar piece. Are you helping them to create that as well, or are you focused only on the repurposing of the content they bring to you?
We definitely can create the pillar piece of content, but one very pleasant surprise that a lot of clients find out in conversation is that they already have that pillar piece of content. Oftentimes, they have a library of webinars that they had given a couple years ago that is still some wonderful evergreen content to do with their industry. And we can go and use those to pull, transform each one into a blog and then transform our social posts out of that on a continual basis. And they haven't had to have someone new come in to, take new videos of them and go through all the creation efforts there. There's usually something in their library that we can just pull from to start.
I think that personally, that is the most daunting piece for me and always has been.
Mm.
And I'm going to speak from personal experience now, having done this pre-planning for an event with Evolution Business Development with you and Ted, and then watching how you went to work behind the scenes. And you just asked for a few simple things. You had a system where it was easy to create the folder. Then from the folder, you started taking those materials and you made images that were beautiful, by the way. Then you took questions that you asked, and those questions were literally answered by us, right? Just jotting down our thoughts. And then you had it all put into this document so that you could just have the image, the link, the language. It was so super easy. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but what we don't understand is often what we resist the most because we don't know what the challenges are going to be. So we create this monumental image of, oh, I'm going to have to climb this wall and jump over these hedges and crawl underneath this barbed wire in order to achieve the outcome. And yet we're not even really sure what the outcome is going to be. How are you taking, because you can't make that experience for every single person, just like you did with me in this planning concept, but how are you doing that for people so that they can see it's not going to be an obstacle course to achieve a goal that they're not really sure what it is?
Absolutely. So a content repurposing plan is a freebie that we have on navigation. And I often explain this process in different pieces of content I make as well. It's a very simple, I think, 5-page PDF that I have, and it asks questions. What is the one piece of content, your pillar piece of content that you create on a repeated basis? You know, are you writing a newsletter to your clients every month? Are you, doing a Facebook Live once a month? And they write that down. And then on the next page, it's where does your audience need to see you? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook? Do you need to show up on Google My Business because you have a lot of local traffic? And when they identify that, then we go into what are the times of how many times a week should we post onto these platforms? And when they look at that, it's usually, 2 to 3 times per week for certain platforms. And that's when it starts to get a lot more simple, like, oh, okay, no, I don't need to be spending, 5 hours a day on my content. So you're starting to see, okay, I really only need to come up with, my 2 to 3 posts per week. I just need LinkedIn and Facebook and Google My Business. And so then after that, it just all gets funneled into a weekly calendar, and it says, we're going to post on Monday, and that's going to be where you have your introduction paragraph from your newsletter with a background. You're going to post a quote on Wednesday and ask a question to your audience to try to find out their current knowledge level, and something else on Friday. And by the end of going through that PDF document, you see that there's really only a couple of posts you need to make, and you already have 75% of the work done with what you're already doing. And so if you can batch create that content once per week, block off an hour on your calendar to make those 3 posts, and you can schedule them. A lot of these platforms have schedulers now. LinkedIn, you can schedule posts, Facebook, Instagram, or you can use outside schedulers as well. Everything's set to go for the week. You don't need to be putting in all that effort every morning, or even worse, waking up in the morning wondering, what do I post today? I haven't posted in a week. Oh, something distracted me. I guess I'll do it tomorrow. And that's when you lose consistency and lose traction.
All right. So I know it's your nature to make life easier for everybody that you're around, and to tell them how simple it is and give them the tools. So, and Dave's sitting in the background asking the same question that I'm about to say, I think, and saying, okay, so Liz, why don't you explain to them why they actually need you? What's going to, so they can do it themselves, right? But what's the difference between having you and Dave and your team helping through that navigation, not just using your free tools, but moving into that next phase where
Sure.
they want to hire you?
Sure. And it really comes down to the time that you want to spend doing it. Whether you're doing it as the business owner, and when I first started my virtual assistant business, I was doing all of this myself, so I can speak from experience how many hours it takes to go and research the best practices for what's trending on LinkedIn, and the best hashtags for Instagram, and the best audios to put in your reels. That can turn into a full-time job in itself. So if you are looking to make a presence for your business, doing the DIY content calendar is a great way to start. You're getting yourself a beautiful storefront. You're putting up some really nice posts. So if people hear about you, they can go check you out online. In order to take it to the next level where you are posting with the frequency and the aggressive hashtag strategies, and perhaps even integrating some paid posts, things like that, then that's when it's time to call on an expert who has already done all of that research and is up on the current trends and can advise you where to lean in and say, okay, you're thinking your audience is over on Instagram, but it turns out the demographics are actually better for you on TikTok. Let's really lean in over there. So you want to know that all the effort that you're putting into this to really get some leads, get some new clients, is going to pay you back. And there's the difference right there. You can do it yourself, but it'll probably be more hours than the busy business owner is willing to or can afford to use.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what I've learned over the last 3 months of being more consistent and opening up new methods is that DIY is great for trying new things and saying, well, I don't know, does this even actually work? And so I was on that camp. I was like, yeah, I like video and it's nice. And do I really need to make reels and do this and do that? And they're imperfect. But I started doing it, and I started doing it with some consistency. And I did it on my own, of course, right? Because I'm pretty independent that way. And what has happened is that I keep on getting, at least once a week, if not multiple times a week, people that I don't see commenting or even liking those reels. And they keep on saying, you have a really good presence. Those videos that I'm seeing, or this or that, and they're referring to it. And so I went, oh, it's being seen. And so I'm at that point now where I'm going, okay, and this was actually my question to you when I was answering one of your posts, right? Because this is the work that you're doing and you're really effective at it. And so I was answering and saying, okay, so when do we make that shift? When do we, and for me, the question has been, when do can I make the shift to having a professional doing it like yourself? But what about the piece where consistency, right? If I start this, can I maintain it? Not you, you're going to maintain it great, but obviously there's a cost to doing this business. And so talk to us a little bit about that. When is the right time for somebody to make the shift? When is it cost effective? When we talked a little bit about time versus money, right? And we know time is money. So I'll turn it over to you. I'm obviously, this is a question burning in my mind.
and probably most solopreneurs and entrepreneurs' minds as well, to be honest. One of the biggest things to mention first before answering your exact question is that with social media or blogging, any type of content marketing, consistency, as you mentioned, is so important. And it is a long game. If you're looking to make that traction and get those comments like you're mentioning on social media, you're going to be looking at a 3 to 6 month window before everything that you've posted really starts to gain a nice snowball and to keep going, and your audience is starting to have noticed you and they know to come back to you and they're revisiting, and then they finally start commenting. That's a 3 to 6 month process. And a lot of people who try to throw up a couple posts on social media get discouraged after a couple weeks when they're like, well, one person liked it and it was my mom, so I'm going to stop. So they need to have patience with that. And blogging, it's even longer. It's 6 to 12 months, to be honest, before the Google bots will notice you. There are a lot of, tricks of the trade when it comes to getting yourself found on Google. It definitely, that's like a whole day's conversation. Won't even go into that, but that's, again, 6 to 12 months or so. So with that in mind, knowing that it's a long game, the way that you can kind of get a signal to your business and to yourself that it may be time to start outsourcing and to be moving from doing your own content is when you start to get a really good system and you start to know what works. Like you mentioned, ISIS, it's a great place for if you're doing your own content to try new things and to see what your audience likes. Now, a good next step for someone in your shoes would be to make a couple videos of yourself creating your content. Now that you know what works, make a couple of standard, ways that you create your content. If you're thinking in terms of an business operations mind, it's a standard operating procedure. Create a standard operating procedure for your content marketing and put it in a folder, whether it's a Google Drive or, somewhere on a hard drive. And if you hire an assistant, whether it's a virtual assistant or in-person office assistant, they can take that, your standard procedures, and they can start creating that content for you. That frees you up to, branch out, start seeing if you, make a little bit more content, start creating some freebies, does that get you some traffic? Start taking note of what is performing the best. Are people who are coming to you starting to mention, oh, I really liked your blog on this. Okay, we know that, blogging, it, could be worth something expanding on. So once you've gotten some extra help, you can start putting out more content. And then you can do a strategy session with a professional. You don't need to hire right away. You can find out what is their opinion on where you should be, how often should you be posting, are you on the right track? Are there any improvements that they would suggest? And with that feedback, you can make your next steps from there. Whether it's okay, it's going great. My virtual assistant is doing that content for us, and we're just going to keep doing this because it's getting me leads, or it wouldn't be that much more money. It would make sense for my business if I hire a professional to start doing an additional thing for me. And I can see that it would make business sense because there's a good potential for some return on investment there.
One of the things that I love about you and the business that you've created is that you never stop improving and you never stop learning. I've never heard you say that. And maybe I've never asked the question quite right either, but I've never heard you say that more clearly. And it was so simple to follow. I literally was writing down the steps and I was like, oh yeah, I've done that piece and I've done that piece, but I missed that piece. And then I tried to leapfrog and go to the next one. And that's where it starts to break down. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We're going to have so much fun in the mastermind in a few minutes. But I want you to one of the things I said about you was faith-based organizations were really important to you. But give us a little bit more about that, because you did mention that while you advertise that you help Christian or owned businesses, there's more to it than that. Can you share that as kind of one of our parting pieces for everyone?
Absolutely. Yes, I am a Christian, so it's on my heart to help other organizations that might be trying to spread the word about Jesus and their messaging. However, if there is a business owner who has a pet store and they want some local traffic, I absolutely would love to help them. So it really is. I open the doors to anyone who is a good fit for what it is we're offering, if it makes good sense for, our services. And I always want to be thinking of if it's something that they're not ready for, I want to be very open with them. If they're not ready for my services, I've been very fortunate to network with some amazing professionals that offer different services that might be a better fit for them. And so I look at every discovery call as just a way to see if we're a good fit, but at the same time, on the same level, is there someone else that I could refer them to get them the best growth and to get more eyes on their message.
And I've witnessed that. And I really encourage anyone who's listening to this and thinking, how do I be a creator with Liz rather than just a competitor? Because I do know that you don't just say the words, you really embody it. So we're at that stage where it's time to tell people if they want to orbit with you, right? They're not ready yet. They're somewhere in either starting the system, seeing what works, creating their standard process. hiring an assistant so that they can start to take on the responsibility. And they're somewhere in there. They're not ready for you just yet, but they just love your energy and they want to orbit with you. How do they do that? Where do they find you?
Sure. Yep. I am on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. So I'd love to chat with you in the comments. Feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions. And I'll be trying to do some more video content as well as launching a course later on this year. The course is focused on helping office staff learn to become the content marketers for their business, so they don't need to hire out. They
I
can,
love that.
yes, teach them how to do everything in-house. It seems to be a shift these days.
Huh. Oh, I absolutely love that, Liz. Well, my favorite video that you did was the Busy Bee one. It was so cute. And if you don't know that video from her yet, well, you got to follow her on Facebook so that you can
Thank you.
see it because it was absolutely adorable. All right, so they're moving down through the system. Maybe they don't want it in-house. They don't want you to train somebody else up. They want you to help them to get the job done. How do they find you for that? And what's the next step?
Absolutely. So Navigation VS, standing for navigationvirtualsolutions.com, is our website. And there's a free discovery call there. Fill out a short form, and then I'll have a 30-minute conversation to figure out if we're a great fit to work together. And we take it from there.
Beautiful. Well, we have enjoyed you so much. And if you are listening to this recording, well, I'm sorry that you didn't get to be a part of our mastermind, but that's why you need to come to these lunch and learns every Wednesday. We're here. We hope you'll be here too. And we start at 11:50 a.m. Eastern time. And then we jump into this type of an interview of an expert. Maybe it should be you. And then we move into the mastermind, but we always turn the camera off, well, turn the recording off for that so that people can really dive in and get problems solved. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you for having me, Isis. It's been a pleasure.